Hello. It's Josh here today. Sorry, no introduction, but I was just um, looking at my dogs, and I was thinking about Markov blankets in terms of self-organizing systems, and I was like, a system with two entities or two Markov blanket clouds or nebulas or whatever you want to call it, could really be a system that actually has more than two, without even getting too much into like the abstract sense of the idea of Markov blankets, but just in the sense of like a personality change could, I don't know, I feel like my idea, when we wake up, we don't necessarily feel the same. And I was thinking of this in terms of my two dogs. They're two dogs, like two Markov blankets, of course, just without being abstract about it. And they exist, but their personalities sometimes change throughout just different areas of the day. Some days they're much more outgoing, some days they're less outgoing. And I'm like, are these personality states, are they considered their own Markov blanket that maybe propagate through some way of like some fertile environment for that state to appear comes up and it appears quickly? Maybe there was something and it didn't take long to produce. So maybe there was some excuse me. But maybe there was some state change that turned the fundamental substrate of your Markov blanket or your mind or whatnot, whatever you want to call it. It allowed it to propagate some type of other mindset. So maybe anxiety is that an example of that. Maybe there was something, because even from anecdotal experience, sometimes my anxiety doesn't make sense to me. Like everything will be going great, and for some reason I'll have an anxiety, not an anxiety attack, I don't have those, but I'll have an anxiety just like stricken moment. But I'll think about it logically in that moment, and I'll be like, dude, everything is going fairly well. Of course, with the current speed of AI progression, there is always that back-end anxiety of you got to be learning, you got to be doing more constantly. But other than that, I'm like, everything's going well. And then I was like, what's different from this state of anxiety compared to a state where I'm just enjoying myself perfectly? I mean, nothing's actually different. So let's just enjoy myself. So maybe there's Markov blankets on mental states. I know this is an abstract concept, and I'm just yapping. But our Markov blankets on mental states may be propagating through some fundamental like fertile state space at any given time, and they're temporally sparse, so they can propagate really quickly, but they can also die down really quickly once the fundamental substrate is no longer there for them to persist. And so that does go back to like the metaphysics of like ancient yogi, of just mind states and things of that nature. So I love how these things all interconnect. One thing I am going to end on is the idea of a fundamental informational substrate that's persistent through all of reality and fabric and space-time, whatever you want to call this. And it's there inherently. It's a state space of all possibilities. It's a phylogeny of infinity. And it brings back the metaphysical concepts of the ancients regarding the Akashic records and some given state space, non-local, distributed state space of all informational substrate in reality. Think Michael Levin's work on xenobots and anthrobots. Xenobots being frog skin and heart cells that are kind of surgically combined to create different type of entities that you would think were much simpler, but have their own emergent properties. Emergent, I say that with quotations. Emergent properties. Emergent, I won't get into that, but I kind of am a stochastic parrot of Michael Levin on the concept of emergence. It's not really emergence. We just like calling it emergence when we don't know what the fuck's going on. I really think that's the case of a lot of emergence. But you see these emergent behaviors and these genomic material that did not exist in the species that they were derived from. So you don't see these behaviors like self-replication. Abiotic replication. I forgot the exact type of replication, but it's a type of replication that frogs don't do, or asexual replication, maybe, I don't know, but it's a type of replications that's not that doesn't exist in the frog's genomic material, but in the xenobots, the behaviors do emerge for some reason. Learning patterns, things of that nature, and it really does just make it seem like, yeah, information and biology especially, and other things. Biology is the easiest one for us to visualize and kind of relate to. But in biology, we see these processes emerge of very complex problem-solving behavior on a scale that doesn't really warrant a contemporary view of intelligence. It's things that are like that we just wouldn't consider intelligent. But then when you start realizing these things, it's like there's intelligence at multiple layers of abstraction across every single individual entity. So like my cells are talking to each other on the cellular level. There's atomic mass also conversing in the same space, but on a different fundamental informational substrate. And even going up to the entity, I am participating in an informational substrate, which is society. And it goes down to like, it even gets back to, that's why sometimes people are considered crazy, because they might, or people might go crazy. It's just like a cancer cell when it's disconnected from the informational substrate of the entire system. So it kind of just goes back into amoebic state, and it's like, oh, just replicate. I'm an amoeba. Just replicate. And it doesn't realize it's part of a system and it's not supposed to be replicating. So all these things are doing all these cells. So back to the xenobots, all these cells do this, have the ability to do the same thing. It's just like an informational substrate or some type of biochemical or bioelectric process that's leading them to do what they need to do. But they're all fundamentally capable of the same things. Going back to the that one little critter, I forgot what they're called, but they're a critter like almost like a little lizard, sea lizard. I forgot what their name is. I always forget their name, but you can kind of graft portions of their body onto different portions, and they adapt the same exact way, even though there would be no evolutionary like disposition for that type of behavior. And it even goes back to the tadpole with Michael Levin's work and just directing the biochemical or bioelectrical informational substrate to produce an eye, where an eye would never occur in any evolutionary long-term case. It may be a genetic defect, but it's not something that generally persists. And there's no genetic like evolutionary behavioral adaptation to these processes. For example, like having a eyeball on the back end of a tadpole, and it can use that eyeball to navigate properly. And generally speaking, in a tadpole, the eyeballs are connected via brainstem to some type of nervous system structure or whatnot, or brain or whatnot. And in the eye, or like visual cortex. I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm not a scientist. But the eye, when it's grafted to the tail, when it's not grafted, but when it's grown, when it's told to be existing on the tail, that stem to the visual cortex still exists, but oftentimes leads nowhere or leads into some type of just regular tissue where there's no contemporary view of like informational processing of that type, at least of the visual nature. And it uses that eyeball to navigate somehow, even though the eye is not connected to anything that we would classically call like something that could navigate, that could connect to the navigation system of the being. So it seems like in that case, my take on it, I don't know if this is the correct take, but it seems like maybe when, and I just had this realization now, maybe it's wrong, but maybe when those cells spot the need for a informational pathway through to the navigational cortex or navigational center of the entity, which is the tadpole, maybe the cells throughout that are not classically responsible for that behavior, maybe they form some type of haphazard informational highway to allow that or maybe not even haphazard, but maybe they just form a informational highway that goes straight to the portion of the body that it needs to go to. And how it decides the path of that informational highway, I don't know. Maybe that's not what it does, and maybe there's just something fundamentally that I'm missing. But it's just all extremely weird. What is going on in the informational substrate of reality? How do beings exist? How do any entities persist in space-time? Do you have to have knowledge of your state space and the entities directly interacting with your Markov blanket to persist? Is that how it happens? How does anything really persist? Like, I'm looking at an object right now. It's a little Christmas decoration. And how does that persist? How does that know state space? Is there some fundamental building block of reality that's holding that state space right now? What is going on in there? That's crazy. Like, it really is just deeply fundamentally mind-blowing what is going on. All praise to God, though, I would say, realistically. When you actually start looking into the fundamental aspects of reality, I feel like it's hard to just believe that. Maybe you don't believe a certain theological like affiliation, like Christianity, Hinduism, Muslim, whatever. Maybe you don't believe any certain one, but I feel like when you get deep enough into the like just ideas of like information, it's like, dude, there's something we just do not understand. There's something beyond this. Maybe it's not contemporary belief of a God in the sky or whatnot, but I do feel like it's hard to just be purely like secular or materialist if you really get down to this stuff. It's like, how are you? Maybe I'm missing something. I'm not the brightest guy on earth. Excuse all my burping. I just ate a lot and drank a lot. But yeah, I'm gonna end it right here. About 14 minutes. But information is extremely strange. I will end on this one tidbit that I thought about the other day. I love the paranormal, just fun. I'm like a big fan of scary stories, things of that nature, ghost stories, Bigfoot, cryptids, UFO type vibes. And a common trope seems to be electronic malfunction around some of these events. And I always wondered how, but the more I'm like, well, all this is just like some weird informational substrate. And if there's some type of glitch in the reality type thing, it would probably make sense to impact the electrons in any electronic devices. Like, even if it's battery powered, even if it's not like plugged in, it's like it would make sense that maybe something about fundamentally the informational aspect of electrons would make it more susceptible to that interference. I don't know, but that's where I'm going to leave this at. God bless. 15-minute cutoff. Amen. God bless America.